Hello and welcome, it's Debs here. I wanted to talk to you today about the power of the thoughts that you think moment to moment, those thoughts that pass through your mind, the power that they have to influence you and influence who you are, and how we can look in a healthier direction so that those thoughts become more helpful and more healthy to us moment by moment. Because I can look back over my time. I was in an incredibly abusive relationship and in a terrible state. I was very, very insecure, did not trust myself. And when I think back to what my mind was like, the kind of thoughts that I would have moment to moment that I believed to be true, that had an influence on where I was in my life, how that got me into the position I was in, and how changing my relationship to my thinking changed those thoughts moment to moment and completely and utterly changed my life. So first off, it is actually realizing that we continually as human beings have an internal dialogue. Sydney Banks, who is somebody that I have followed for many years, Sydney Banks said that thought is the missing link. Thought is it's the missing link between the formless, our formless spiritual nature, and what we do in physical form. It's the missing link between those two. It's the two things, it's the bridge, if you like, between those two things. And so understanding how does thought bring things into being in reality, how does it create form? And because thought creates form, things go into form and come back to the formless, into form and back to the formless. How does thought do that? And how do we, if we are creating something, like when I look back in my life and I was creating an abusive relationship, I was creating myself as a victim. I was creating myself as somebody who was really, really insecure, anxious, all sorts of things that I really, really didn't want. And it absolutely did not look to me like I was creating that. That did not look like it was anything to do with my thinking. It looked like that was happening and then I had thinking about it, not that I had thinking that was an integral part of the creation of it. And so the first thing is really beginning to see that we are not separate. When we talk about oneness and things like that, what it's pointing to is we are not separate from those. There's not these things that happen out there and then us over here. There is no separation. We are an integral part of the whole. So firstly, it's about really seeing that. So how we think, the thoughts that we continually think into, have an impact in who we are, how we show up, the experience that we have. And it's not, we can't, or it's not always easy to simply think, well, I'm going to think differently. For me, what really impacted me thinking differently was an understanding of how this works. And it's a little bit like it kind of works like a snakes and ladders game. It's like in a snakes and ladders game, you go along the squares, and then you land on a ladder and you have a huge jump up. And then sometimes you go onto a snake and things come back down. And understanding and a spiritual journey can be very like that. It can have ups and downs in it. You have moments where you just see something really, really clear, and your level of consciousness, who you're being, how you're showing up, has a huge jump. And then you can be going along and you can have a setback which feels as if it's bringing you back. The one thing about a snakes and ladders game that I found out, and somebody told me this, I hope it's true, I'll use it as a metaphor, but if you were to continue playing the snakes and ladders game, overall that game is weighted in your favour. And for all the ups and downs, you're going to end up at that top square. And to me, our spiritual journey is the same. And that has absolutely been my experience in this, in learning to understand my thoughts, understand who I am and how my thoughts impact and influence me. What I have seen is I have had huge game-changing inspirations. I have had ladders that have taken me massively up. And then I've had setbacks. I've had my moments where it's felt like I've lost what I've seen. I don't think for 1 second I have, but I have definitely had those setbacks. But what I know is the more that I continue looking in this direction, the more that I understand, the more deeply I know this, the higher my level of consciousness, generally speaking. When I think back to who I was and the level of consciousness that I lived in, you know, my day-to-day, the thoughts that would go through my mind that absolutely looked real and true. And if those thoughts even occur to me now, it's almost funny that it's so ridiculous that could possibly be true. You know, the difference in me from those days to now is massive. It is huge and continues. However far we go, it continues in that direction. So what am I pointing to? I'm pointing to we are thinking creatures. We create our reality via this missing link, via this beautiful gift of thought. And all spiritual teachers, you know, anything that you listen to, I love listening to different teachers. I love listening to Byron Katie, Eckhart Tolle, Neville Goddard. They're a few of my favourites, but I love all sorts. Abraham Hicks. I love listening to many different ways that this is spoken about, and what I see is all of them fundamentally are pointing to the same thing. They are pointing to this gift that we have to think, this spiritual gift that we have of thought. And whether you call it thought or imagination, or whether you think you have a conscious and a subconscious, whatever, it's all pointing in the same direction, that what we think impacts and influences our life, creates it moment to moment. We are not looking, we are an integral part of it. We are not separate from this. So understanding that you have the power to put your attention onto whatever thoughts you want to think, and it is your attention, your consciousness, that brings these thoughts to life and lights them up and makes them true. And we tend to have habitual thought patterns. When I look back to the person that I was all those years ago when I was in that terrible position, I didn't even really realize it was such a habitual thought that you're just not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. And it was a habitual go-to thought. As I began to understand that my thinking, it wasn't that I wasn't good enough and I was thinking, there was a reality there that I wasn't good enough, and then I thought that. It was the fact that I thought that created who I was being as someone who wasn't good enough. And so it was the opposite way around. And that's what I'm really seeing here with this spiritual journey. Life works from the inside out, the opposite way to what it first appears. And as we begin to see that, and initially, because I had those thoughts, you're not good enough, and created, there was almost like a reality. It was like a loop. I'd thought it, projected it out, then see it as a reality, think it, project it, see it. And so I was in this loop. And the way that we break these loops is we begin to practice. For me, it was always around playing. Okay, what if I have the thought, I'm good enough? And this to me is where the amazing gift of imagination comes in. So it's like, okay, what if I can imagine that I am good enough? And I have to say, when I go back to that time, one of the things that I know was in those early days, it was really difficult for me to even imagine that. And so, it was small steps first on that playground, but then those steps got bigger and more easy. So again, it's practice and habits. So what I see now, if I'm in a situation and I want something different, it is really, really easy for me to think, okay, imagine what it would be like if this different thing was playing out in your life. Like with the huge project that I've undertaken around building my own home. I had this idea that I wanted to buy this piece of land, and I was a million miles away from enough money to do that. And obviously my habitual thinking is, you can't do this, you don't have that kind of money, that's not for you. And it's like, right, okay, imagine if you were someone with that amount of money. Imagine if you were someone who could do this. What would that feel like? And I played in my imagination, I played in this amazing spiritual gift we have of thought, until that became a reality. And now that is a reality. That land belongs to me. And now I'm playing the same game with, imagine that there is a beautiful house on that plot of land. And each, you know, I can do it with small things, and I've done it with other people and all sorts of things, but playing in our thinking in that way. And if something feels like, I deliberately set that as a massive step for me, just because I like to play in that way. But you don't have to do it like that. You can do it, you can think of a small step. Just imagine this was different. Imagine if I thought about it differently. And what I really see, which is so powerful when we're going in this direction, which I am so passionate about, I hope you can tell, is that once we get into this game and we trust ourselves and we play, what happens is we get feedback, we begin to have our own insights and see, like, exactly what I'm doing might not be, it almost certainly is not what you want to be doing. But you will have things in your life, you will have things that you know that you want to be different. And if you play in this arena, you will have your own insights, your own inner guidance will guide you to the things that you want to create, the things that you want to do, the things that are important to you. And that to me is what this is all about. This isn't about, I absolutely do not want you to become a carbon copy of me. I'm me. You know, I want you to feel into you and who you are and what it is that you love and you want to do. So that is really what this video is about. It's like, that's what's here, that's what's possible when we begin to understand how we create our own lives, how we create our experience, how we create it all. We are immensely powerful, beautiful creators. We are not separate, we are an integral part of the whole. And as we begin to live into and understand that, it is, we wake up to the possibility that is within us, that is personal to us and that is within us. And that might be different, entirely different to where I am, you know, to what I'm doing and what's going on for me. But it isn't the point to be the same. It is the point is to wake up to the possibility within you. And to me, the only way that we get to wake up in that way is to have the courage to play. And one of the very first things when I was early on in my journey, I wrote a program, and then it became a book called The Warrior's Journey. So if you are early on in this in your journey, and to be fair, I still refer back to that book. I think, have I got one? No, I haven't got a copy on my desk, but anyway, I will put the link to that book in the show notes underneath this video. And it's a great book, certainly for those small steps and to begin to play in this arena. And that's what I'm going to invite you to do, to play. Pretty much on all of my videos, it's all about actually, you know, get into the game and play, because once we do that, things change. I love you guys. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now, and thank you.